Smooth listening, easy jazz. Yes, sir. Coming up next, we have a little bit of a Count Basie for everybody.
It's just the ending, Chad, that does it. Like, it's so cool until it gives you like the lullaby music at the end, and then it's just time to go to sleep.
It's dreamy. It's so dreamy. I love it.
Speaking of dreamy, there's no Alex, but we got the Men in Black today by no coincidence. Chad Hastings filling in. So you know it's going to be a fantastic show when Chad is here. Chad, how do you feel when you do 2 shows a day? Like how does that resonate for you?
Hey, it's a little bit extra work, but hey, it's all right. I love talking shop. I love talking about it. So it's a lot of fun. I'm glad you asked me to jump in, and I think we have a completely insane conversation to have today.
It's going to be a good one. Texas Longhorns are having practice today. Steve Sarkisian let it be known that it's probably going to be a lighter practice, so more like a walkthrough-ish kind of thing before they amp up again for Saturday's practice, which will not only be more intense, but then, of course, they're going to have a lot of visitors that are in there. DeCorian Moore is going to be the guy that we talk about. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other big names. So big weekend ahead, obviously, on the 40 acres. Chad, by the way, just before we get into the topics, do you got your eclipse glasses yet? Are you doing this?
I do. I have eclipse glasses ready to go, not just because I'm the son of a scientist that would tell me to get those eclipse glasses, but my wife's got a connection with the Girl Scouts. And because she's a Girl Scout leader, you got to get the Girl Scouts ready. And there were a couple extra pairs that were set aside. So they're downstairs right now. We're ready to go for Monday.
Wait, so are the Girl Scouts going to be in front of Walgreens during the eclipse?
I don't actually know where the Girl Scouts are going to be stationed up. But they had a little, they got together, made sure to understand about the eclipse and learn about everything, but also learn, hey, let's wear the eclipse glasses when we are viewing. So I will have a pair to check out on Monday. Those are very important for people that don't know. Please wear your eclipse glasses or do the pinhole camera. Don't stare at the eclipse.
Well, you will have to you and Ketch are going to have to figure out on Monday's show what you guys are going to do, because it starts in the middle of your show, or at least the halfway point. So you guys may have to break it, just break it up and do an hour just for something that's that historic. But I just wanted to kind of get into that. Chad, this is I want to throw the ball to you, because this has kind of been your brainchild. Like, this has kind of been your baby. There's certain things that are Chad Hastings statistical production, right? And the Texas A&M stat, that has been a Chad Hastings stat as far as the wins are concerned. That's actually done really well on our channel, by the way, from the shorts perspective, and well over 10,000 views. So if you haven't seen it, check that thing out. But Chad, you've got this other really, really cool stat that goes back to Sark and Bama. And I want you to set it up for everybody and take us wherever you want to go with this, because it's a really great conversation we're about to have.
So the thing that got me started thinking about it is I can't stop thinking about these receivers for Texas. When the Ryan Wingo discussion happened about what freshman, I definitely want to get your thoughts on that at some point today, about kind of your reaction to Sark saying it, but mentioning Wingo like he did, bringing in the receivers that he did. I keep thinking of Bama in 2020. Being an A&M fan, I watched that team go up and down the field, not just against my team, but against every team. So the silly question that I'm asking today, Anwar, and I understand going in that the answer to this question is very, very possibly no. But I'm giving Steve Sarkisian and the talent he's put together this credit by asking the question: can Texas's offense in 2024 be as good or better than Bama in 20? Again, I know it sounds silly as it comes out of my face, but when you start thinking about the numbers, the setup numbers from last year, it's not that nutty. Texas ran for 253 yards more last year than Bama did when they won the national title. And Bama only threw for a little over 600 yards more than Texas did last year when they won the national title. So I don't think it's that crazy and we can dig into some of the other numbers that I found, Anwar. There are some big glaring things that have to happen for Texas, and there's some disadvantages he'll have, Sark, that he didn't have in 2020. But I do think if I'm a Texas fan and I'm headed to the SEC, you're not just going to be in the middle, right? You're not just going to compete to be in the middle. You just went to the Final Four. Do you want to fall back to 10? No. You think you can get back. Sark thinks he can get back. Quinn is back. So, and then there are other key elements that are back. Can they get there? So that's the question we're throwing out today. I know it's going to be a little crazy to think of at first, but as we go through this, I think you'll see there's an opportunity here. If we trust Sark, Anwar, I think there's an opportunity for this team to maybe throw up some numbers that make us look back to that last team that he called plays for that just torched everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the key thing that you said is, okay, do you trust Sark? And I'd have to say, Chad, he has earned our trust. I mean, he year by year, we've seen the team get better. Not only on the field, recruiting wise, transfer portal wise, like we've seen the uptick, right? We've seen a guy that going into last season, people were saying, "Oh, what do you guys think about Jonathan Brooks? Could be as good as Bijan." We're like, "Yeah, what are you saying? What are you smoking? A little crack?" Like that's how we thought about them, right? And then all of a sudden, Jonathan Brooks comes in, and you said to yourself, "Oh, well, statistically speaking, he was as good as from a statistical standpoint as Bijan was." You looked at a guy that says, "Okay, you lose Moro Ajomo, you lose Keandre Colborn. I mean, what's going to happen with that defensive line? Like, that's going to be a whole lot of plays. You're replacing guys that got drafted." And then Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy happened. And you're like, oh, well, that was kind of a little bit of an upgrade. You say to yourself, okay, Isaiah Nayer, was injured before. So who's going to be the opposite guy starting the opposite of Xavier Worthy? And they bring in Adonai Mitchell and say, all right, well, let's see what Adonai Mitchell can do. And the next thing you know, you're like, oh, Adonai Mitchell looks like a guy might be a first-round pick, right?
Yep.
So every time there's been a question that we've had was as far as a whole or can this thing happen, Steve Sarkisian has gone out and he's been able to answer the questions. And so so that's why I said he's earned a measure of trust where now, like going into this year, even though I may have like my question marks about the defensive tackles and I made some question marks here and there, and I want to know who's going to fill in the linebacker position, I'm not doubting him because I have the feeling like, okay, if you put this guy on the field, he's going to have to be pretty good. You put Christian Jones on the field and people thought he was washed up. Look how good he ended up being. Look how good productive he ended up being, right? So he's earned that for me. But Chad, let's do this. Put into perspective, if we can, so we can go how good that 2020 team was. Mm-hmm. Let's get into the weeds as far as this is concerned, so we can understand like the task ahead for them. So because I don't know, it's been a while, and that was also a COVID year, so there was a lot of craziness going on. So people may not remember how good that team was, but how good were they?
So the thing that stands out to me are the three big elements of offense, the triplets, if you will: quarterback, receiver, and running back. They had a badass version of each one of those things. Now, to give you a little setup, Mac Jones, the year before, when he was backing up Tua, he ended up with 141 attempts, 69% completions. Nice. But that's where Quinn ended up last year, 69% on the completion. Obviously, Quinn had a lot more attempts and all that. The rating for Mac Jones was 186.8 in the season before. This is before the national title year. So that's even better than where Quinn was. Quinn needing to take a step, obviously, is huge here. So then Mac Jones goes into the year, Anwar. He goes 77% completions. 77. 41 touchdowns to 4 picks. His rating was 203.1. That's the quarterback.
Wait, one.
That's
I'm
the
going to get
quarterback.
that stat up there for you. Hold on. I'm going to get those stats up here for you. Here we go.
Yeah, just absolutely silly. Silly numbers. And then you can also see Najee Harris's numbers there. Got him up over 250 carries. He averaged 5.8, damn near 1,500, and he went to the house 26 times. That's the running back. And by the way, what Sark's going to need this year, what he had in 20, he may just not have this year, which is a guy of that quality coming back. With all due respect to Baxter and Blue, Najee Harris had 200 carries in 2019. So let's set that part up too. He had the dogs coming back, which Sark won't have at the absolute top level. We have to respect that part of it, right? So it was 251 for Najee Harris. But the key ingredient, Anwar, ends up being the freaky receiver number, because they went and got a receiver a Heisman Trophy. Devontae Smith, 117 on the catches for over 1,800, and you see the 15.9. But so that gives the perspective of just how good this team was. They absolutely shredded people. And one of the keys was down the field. So as I'm thinking about this Texas team, I'm thinking, okay, Quinn Ewers really has to dial it up down the field, has to be better down the field. One of my favorite Mac Jones numbers, Anwar, was when he went 20 yards or more down the field and he went outside the numbers, 83% completions. 83%. It's a stupid number. It probably never gets touched. So then I'm thinking, well, there's no way Quinn's going to have those type of numbers. There's no way Quinn can produce the yards per catch down the field that Mac was. But check this out. In 2020 with Bama, Mac Jones had 6 different guys that caught 18 balls or more and averaged 11 per catch. 6 of them. But last year, Quinn had 6 guys that averaged 11.4 or more per catch and had 14 catches or more. It's not the same, but it's not that far off. They had guys in Worthy, Mitchell, Sanders, Whittington. It was 13.5, 15.4, 15.2, 13 flat. Those numbers were pretty damn good. Now, of course, Anwar, what's the key to this list here? 1, 2, 3, and 4 want to get drafted. They're all gone. All of them. One thing Sark brought back in 2020 at Bama, Devontae Smith. Smith had 68 catches in 2019. He went 18 on an average. He had almost 1,300 yards, and he had 14 touchdowns the year before. So understand, as I'm throwing out this question, the one ingredient he's bringing back that he had in Bama is quarterback. That's it. He's not bringing back a Najee Harris, and he's not bringing back a Devontae Smith. That we have to admit at the beginning of this conversation. But now, Anwar, we start to ask those questions of, does Texas have a guy that can step into those shoes? Can CJ Baxter go 2 to 250 on carries? Is that what Sark wants to do? And then, is there a receiver? Is it Cook? Is it Bond? Is it Bolden? Is there anybody that could say, Coach, throw me 100 footballs? Throw me. Worthy got 75 last year. Remember that number?
Yeah.
Is there anybody you could say, hey, Coach, I'll take that 75. I'll take Worthy's 75 and throw me 20 more. Trust me. I'm your guy. That's the part we're not going to know. But that's what Sark is trying to versatilely do. Mr. Versatility, he's trying to dial all this up and find these weapons in 2024. Going to be damn hard to do. I understand it. But it's numbers I'm going to pay attention to, Anwar, because I do think this is a powerful group. I think it's going to be a versatile group. And I think they could put up some serious numbers. It might not be Mac Jones in 2020 kind of numbers, but I don't know. I think it might be in the neighborhood if it all works right.
So let's do this. Let's do this, Chad. So I love the conversation. Let's do this. Let's see who could fill those roles. Okay, Quinn. Let's do Quinn being Mac. Let's say CJ being Najee, what the odds are. Let's say whoever, as our number one receiver here being Devontae Smith. Who could be the guy that would be the tight end? Who the tight was Billingsley the top tight end at that year? Like, let me
now
go back to
that. It's an interesting comparison. Billingsley and something called Miller Forrestal caught 41 balls combined. Last year for Texas, Sanders was at 45. Helm was at 14. So you're losing the 45 catches. You're basically losing about what Sanders caught last year. You're losing that. That's kind of what Bama had in 20. Yeah. So in a way, that's a little bit of a wash number. But I'm glad you brought up tight ends because I start thinking about Helm and Nyblack together. Could we see them at around 40 catches, 40 to 45? Could they help replace those Sanders numbers? Another interesting number, Anwar, both these teams, 2020 Bama and last year's Texas team, the second leading receiver on these teams had 55 catches. It was Mechie at Bama, and it's Mitchell at Texas. Interesting for Mechie, he went from 4 catches to 55 in a year. Wow. 2019, he caught 4 balls. 4. Wow. That's it. Wow. And then he goes to 55, averaging 16.7 a catch and 6 touchdowns. Dude blossomed like that. And that's another part of this, Anwar, because like you said, we didn't know Sweat and Murphy were Sweat and Murphy till we were kind of in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you don't know. Nobody tells you, man, I fell in love over a 2-month period. And I documented it on it. No, you just kind of go from not being there to being there. Correct. You know, it just kind of happens where you think, well, wait a minute, this is a damn good football team. Let's start looking at these numbers. And I think that's why it's on my mind today. Yesterday, I believe, was 150 days till opening kickoff. And we're obviously closing in on the spring game. And guys are going to need to step up. Anwar, I think, as much as the transfer guys are interesting to talk about, can Bond take another step? Could he be the guy? Bolden led Oregon State in catches, yards, and touchdowns. All of it. Can he be the guy to say, you know what? I'm your guy. Sorry. I'm your guy. Throw me 100 balls. But the one I keep going back to is Cook. Can Jonte Cook go from 8 catches to the best receiver on this team? Like, that's a lot to ask a guy to do. I just told you Mechie went from 4 to 55, and that was second on the team. We're going to ask Jonte Cook to go from 8 to Worthy's number, 8 to 75. That's a crazy jump. But I've heard people predicting it. I'm kind of predicting that he'll catch 70 balls, and it sounds crazy. But I kind of think Jonte Cook is that kind of guy. And if we get 4, 5, 6 games into the season and we're all watching it happen, then maybe today's discussion doesn't seem as silly.
Well, listen, before we go too far down the road, because I definitely want to get a little, I want to analyze it, and I want to compare, Quinn to Mac, and I want to go, I want to go position by position group. There, and I like Bob will do 75 plus by Stanley Klein. Good morning to you, Stanley, as well.
And maybe it is Bond. I mean, that could be the answer. The simple answer could just be, come on, guys. He's gonna take the guy who was at Bama, and he'll use him to go chase Bama numbers. Yeah, maybe.
Well, let's listen. Some people are chasing, and some people are trying to buy a home at this moment, Chad Hastings. And if you could throw that up for me, if people are looking to buy a home, Eric sells homes DFW. He's in the DFW area. You don't have to look any further than my main man El Presidente. Looking to buy a home, looking to sell a home, whatever it is, he's got you covered. We have our numbers show that we have a large viewership in the DFW area, looking to relocate. Kids are getting out of school, whatever the case may be, looking to get a bigger house, looking to downgrade, whatever it is. Go ahead. Eric Sells Homes, DFW. Check it out one last time. El Presidente himself, Eric Sells Homes, DFW. Let them know that your favorite sent you. And Chad, come on back in.
When we make that screen big, that Bama A gets pretty big behind you on one.
It does. And you know what? It does. But just so we're clear, rather this
yeah, there it is.
This is my press box seat for when Texas beat Bama last year. So that's the only reason I have it. In fact, what this whole wall is just to make Texas fans feel a little bit better. First of all, this is the 2023 season, so that's what that credential is. This is the Red River from a couple of years ago, the beatdown that Texas gave.
That's 49-0.
That's 49-0. That's 49-0 right here.
Yeah,
so that's 49-0. 49-0. That's the Bama win, and this is the Big 12 championship credential from last year when they won. So this whole thing is I want Texas fans to be just soothed when they look over my shoulder, and I know they see Bama, but it was at Bama. So, that's the only momentum I could really get. For Texas fans to know, beat Bama on the road, 49-0, great season, Big 12 championship.
There it is. Okay, there's the wall.
And then there's one more. Texas Beef Traders. Can you tell everybody about Texas Beef Traders, Chad Hastings, or should I?
All I know is every time Alex talks about Texas Beef Traders, the man loses his mind. That's all I know. He's talking about how the high quality of the beef. He's talking about all the good stuff they can do for you. There's your promo code. If you're an old schooler, you know what OBFWF10 is all about. But even if you don't, that's the code you use to get the special discount. But check them out. That's your QR code. And Alex can't stop bragging about Texas Beef Traders, making sure you're getting high quality beef, making sure it's all dealt with the right way. And apparently it's the greatest tasting beef on the face of the earth. So you need to try it. You just need to check it out. That's what Alex would tell you.
Yes, and he'd also throw some shots at HEB and
that's true.
And tell you not to buy from there. We won't do that because we're not going to discourage anybody from being a partner with Orange Bloods, including you, HEB.
That is correct. So Anwar, this chat just came in from Stanley. Here's an interesting thought. Blue will be Harris this year, and he has the talent. Stanley, if you're right, Jaden Blue will go from 65 carries to over 250. That's the number. Again, Najee Harris it was like 201 in 19. Then he went up to 251. So Anwar, here's what I kept wondering looking at the numbers. On Jonathan Brooks, even with the injury, he had 187 last year. Deep in your soul, do you think Sark was going to get him to 250 if he could?
Yes.
Was it headed to 250?
Yeah. Yes. Sark is that you're the Najee Harris thing. It just points it out, right? And Sark's history is of a guy that when he's got his lead back, he always goes with his lead back to his Washington days, right? And I have some stats somewhere in here, but he's always been that guy. So yes, when he rides that high hit. So everyone thinks like, oh, there's going to be a dual back thing. That is not Sark. That is not what he does. There's nothing on his resume that does that. Brooks would be the guy. And if Baxter's the guy, then Baxter will be the guy that gets over 200 carries. And if Blue ends up the guy, it'll be over 200. But it won't be any kind of split.
Because it feels like if you just look at last year's numbers, you say 187 Brooks, 138 Baxter. Oh, that feels kind of like a split. But then you factor in the injury and where Brooks would have been. Here's the number in 2020, Anwar. Najee had 251. The second most carries on that team, 91. Brian Robinson. 91 from 251. Y'all can all do that math. That is 60 full carries difference. So just sorry, 160 full carries difference. 251 to 91. That's a lot. So that tells you, I think, it's about what he wants. And back to that, we've been having a running back discussion, Anwar, and I think there's this thing about, Baxter and Blue. People are thinking dual threat Baxter Blue, bring in some of the freshmen. What about Wisner? Okay, but that's not the way it broke down when it came to when it came to Bama back then. Also, just an interesting number because I'm the one creating this weirdness today. The third most carries for Bama that year was Mac Jones for basically nothing. But Mac Jones did have 35 carries. The fourth most carries for Texas last year, Quinn Ewers, 59 carries for a whopping 1.3 per carry. And he did have 5 rushing touchdowns last year. Mac Jones only had 1 rushing touchdown in 2020. He's more versatile that way than Mac Jones was in terms of the running. But clearly, Anwar, there's 3 elements to this for me that's really simply stated for how it could happen. Quinn's got to take a massive step. The offensive line's got to be badass. And they need to find a clear number 1 receiver and running back. Those things must happen if they're going to get anywhere close. A committee is not chasing Bama numbers from 2020. It's just not going to happen.
Can I just I want to show you something that I had here on Orange Bloods here, and I'm going to try to do my screen share, and hopefully I don't share too many things that I shouldn't be showing. Let me see if I can make this. Can you take us off the screen for a second?
I can't. Hang on. Let me see if I can pull this off. How about we do that right there?
Perfect. All right. So I've been keeping an eye on this, okay, for years. If you go back to the running backs, okay, and you go back to starting from 2009 when Sark was a head coach, right? You got, just look here. You got Chris Polk. I say 200. That should be 226 carries, not yards.
Okay.
For the 113, the 5 touchdowns. You go to 2010, 260 carries. Jesse Collier has 77. 2011, 293, 47. You go to 2012, Bishop Sankey, 289. Next leading carrier had 29. 2013, Sankey, 327. 327.
What the hell? Damn, Sark, give him a rest, would you?
My man has 48. One of at USC, you had 276. Justin Davis has 129. The closest that you got was 2015. Sark, but ends up with 169. 153, back to where you go when he, but again, that year is that year. 2019, you got Najee at 209, Brian Robinson. 2020, to what you point out, Najee 251. I mean, we're going through this. Bijan Robinson in 2021, $195. Roshan at 96. Bijan at 258. Roshan at 93. 2023 was Jonathan Brooks, CJ Baxter. And again, there's an injury factor in there that kind of skews those numbers. But I just wanted to point that out, that if you look through Sark's history suggests he has a bell cow, and that's his running back. And it's very rare that we're going to see this equal distribution. It's just not what he does. It's not on his resume.
Yeah, it's a great point. And this whole discussion we've had about CJ Baxter is his boo. That may or may not be true, but the man has a boo. The man will dedicate himself to a running back, and he will go. And just think about those. If Brooks stays healthy, that 187 to get up to that 250 area, that's obviously right around 70 carries. If you took that off, you'd be looking at 250 and then around, 60 for Baxter, 60, 70, something like that. It's not that, I don't know that he thinks about it that way, Anwar, but you just laid those numbers out. That's how it plays out in his system. Yeah. And that's how it played out for this national championship team in 2020, 251 carries for Najee Harris. But again, I would point out Texas rushed total as a team. They rushed for 253 yards more than that Bama team. Can they really lean into that this year? He's got to pick his guy. Let's say it's Baxter. Can they really lean in and he's your number 1? And then can we quickly find out? Doesn't need to happen slowly. They don't need to find out who their best receiver is, in Dallas. They don't need to figure it out when they're headed to Fayetteville. They need to figure it out probably, by halfway through the ULM game, they need to really know who the comfort level is. That's what that's what I love about the fact that even though you guys are only getting limited looks at practice, as this goes on, as you continue to check with sources, we're going to find out who is Quinn comfortable with the most. Once Bolden is on campus, who does he love the most? When Quinn Ewers wants a play, who does he go after? Because when Mac Jones wanted a play, there was no doubt where he was going. And he went to him so much that the Heisman folks said, well, I guess we do have to give it to a receiver. Yeah, you do.
Yes.
Because he was that damn good. So can they establish who those guys are? I think it's an excellent point. The numbers speak to it. He wants that bell cow running back, and he wants that badass. I don't know if you call a number one receiver a bell cow, whatever you call that guy. That's what he wants.
Yeah.
And Quinn's got to obviously help him get there. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if it develops. But yeah, those are crazy numbers that he does. But that 250, I think, is going to blink in our heads this year. 250 for Harris, and just think about it as what 120, 1 to 120 for Devontae Smith. Is that where a Texas player will be this year, or could it possibly be even more spread out among this talent? We'll see.
So, all right. So let's do this. Mac Jones finished that year with 4,500 yards, passing yards.
Yeah.
And a sick TD to interception ratio, by the way, 41-4. That's just ungodly. And of course, you see his passing percentage. What do you think Quinn needs to do? Let's start there. What does Quinn need to do to get to that 4,500 number? Because we're talking about from last year's Quinn stats. We're talking about he was at 34.79. Like he does now. Obviously, he misses 2 games because of the injury, but he's not throwing for 500 yards in each game, right? That's not going to get to that 1,000. And of course, he's at that 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. So you want to see that number obviously optimistically rise a little bit more. Actually, I'm sorry, he has 6 interceptions, 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I'm sorry, I added in Malik's number. Obviously, you want that Quinn number to be well into the 30s as far as the TDs are concerned. What do you think has to happen? What has to happen in the Chad Hastings mind for Quinn to then have some sort of Mac Jones kind of numbers?
I think this did happen with Mac Jones. I think we need to see Quinn, and this is going to be Sark's challenge on it. We've seen overly aggressive Quinn, and that kind of got clunky at times. And now I think last year we started to see a little more of a patience in Quinn, not as much taking shots downfield. But as I laid out, they had some serious yards per catch for these receivers. They learned the valuable lesson that yards per reception, it's not just about how far the receiver ran before you threw it to him. It's the whole damn play. He could be 3 yards down the field. He could be 40 yards down the field. You get credit for all of that. If I tell you he's at 15.7 per catch, that's the whole play. They learned that lesson. So to me, Anwar, it's take the patience that you showed in 2023, and now you have to go find that aggression. That's what I think Mac Jones did in 2020. It's like you found your base level, and then now you got to go after your weapons. Now you got to go buy new shiny knives and guns and, hand grenades and bazookas, and you got to figure out how to use all of it, but be aggressive. Go after people. Find out what that is. We have seen, you just referenced a game, 49-0. Man, I don't think I've ever seen Quinn Ewers go after a defense like he went after OU that day. And we've seen him do it. So I think he needs to add the aggression. What that's going to require, like we said, is find your badass running back, find your badass receiver, and gentlemen up front, you have got to be badass. Go back and watch Bama block people in 2020. It was oppressive. It was incredible to watch how they blocked plays. Go watch how clean Mac Jones is. Go watch it. Go pull up anything from 2020. Trust me, I had to watch one game very closely for 4 quarters as they carved the Aggies up.
Yeah.
It was an offense that blocked and tackled incredibly well. That offensive line for Texas, if they take another step on War, that opens the door because now we can go downfield a little more. Now you can, now Sark and Quinn and these guys and Milwee come together and say, now we can really go after this. We can mess around with this. And hey, I think Black can do this. Well, wait a minute. What about this running back out of the backfield? Like all of it comes together. By the way, Najee Harris, 43 catches that year. 43.
So good.
He was their third leading receiver.
Yes.
Anwar. Yeah. He caught 2 fewer balls that year than JT Sanders caught last year for Texas. That's the kind of weapons. So what weapons do you have and how do you use them? How does he unleash them? That's my answer. What about you? What do you see? You see from Quinn that you think needs to dial up?
So this is where it is for me. I had to go back and get so I'm adding it. How do I get an extra 1,000 yards out of Quinn? Okay, we can't have games like Wyoming where we look back and say, "What the hell was that about?" Like that. Yep. And I said this as a Quinn guy. I said as a guy who stands on the table for Quinn. I'm a Quinn guy. Like you everyone knows that. Okay, but I can't have a game like Wyoming where we're 11 of 21 for $131 and 2 touchdowns. Sure, you win the game, but you go to yourself, you go, what the hell was that all about? Right? We can't have like a Texas Tech game, right? With 17 to 26 for $196, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Sure, they win. Texas goes ahead and wins that game, but it was kind of like, the Houston game. It's a crazy game. Like his completion percentage is fantastic. Only 211 yards, in that game, 2 touchdowns. Like there needs to be that run of 300 plus games. Like there needs to be more games like the Alabama game, right? Where you're just 24 of 38 for 349 and 3 touchdowns. Like that needs to be, there needs to be that Oklahoma State game, right? That's what I need to see consistently. Just Quinn go out and just dominate. Like dominate. I know big games. I know what, Alabama, Oklahoma State. I know what to expect from that, right? I know what I'm going to get. But if you're talking about how he needs to dial it, I think for me, eliminating some of these, like, I don't know what that was about. A Rice game, it shouldn't be 260 yards passing, right? That should be 380, 400, and then sitting down in the fourth quarter. That's what I mean for me.
Yeah.
Is the next step is dominating week in and week out.
I think that's absolutely fair. And it's interesting looking at those numbers. You think about some of the games where it got, clunky is the word I always use for an offense when it just slows down. The Brooks injury obviously is a big part of the year, and you got to forgive them a little bit after it happened for how do they adjust to that. But I also think Anwar this year, it's back to Sark. It's a man who called the plays. This is the guy. He's also got to go back and look at those situations of, well, why did we end up 10-all fourth quarter, Wyoming? Why did that Houston game end up close? And if they spot a ball correctly, the ending of that game could be different. Like, why did that occur? And I think the answer ultimately is the balance of everything. He didn't always dial up his weaponry.
Yeah.
The most effective, aggressive way. And that's why, Anwar, I keep saying it. I've said this for years. I said it about Greg Davis, and I say it about Sark even more. It's not that he gets too cute. It's that he doesn't get cute enough. He doesn't stay consistently cute. His cute can kick everybody's ass. And sometimes he just gets a little tight, and he'll get a little bit conservative and clunky on about a 3-play set. And you're looking at it like, wait, are they kicking a field goal? Didn't they just have 1st and 10? If he can and the thing about 2020, Anwar, is he went hammer down all year long. It was all gas, no brakes. It was. And also, as I've said, all gas, no brakes doesn't mean that you have to do that with the gas pedal the whole time. You can do that, and then that, and then that, and then that. It's like driving a go-kart. Don't ever hit the brake. That's fine. But it doesn't mean you have to go full blast all the time. You need to find all of your levels. And he did that in 2020. There was never a moment in 2020 where you thought Sark was like, well, I just don't know what I should do here. He just kept coming, man. It was so impressive to watch. And like you said, we were stuck in COVID. Our lives were in turmoil. And I think some people just kind of didn't pay attention to it. We had just seen LSU flip out and put up more numbers in certain ways. Go look at Burrow and that team. Like, they went even above these numbers that we're talking about with Bama. But it was so impressive to watch in 2020. So what I think needs to happen is he's got to go back and analyze those close games. Shouldn't have been close with Wyoming. It shouldn't have been close with Houston. You mentioned a couple of the other games where you're just like, what is going on? If that dials up a little bit and he gets guys he can trust, that's also what gets us closer to this discussion actually being real. Like, could we actually see Texas put up numbers that reminds us of his last truly badass team?
I'm just looking up as we're talking. I just wanted to kind of just to piggyback everything you're saying, because I was kind of curious about this. In 2020, Alabama led the SEC in third down conversions. I'm trying to look at they completed 58.9% of their third downs. So I want to see what that looked like. Let me look and see what they were at for fourth down conversions, though. Just wanted to see there were not as many. They only actually went for it. It's crazy. They only went for it 9 times on fourth downs. They only had 9. They converted 5 out of 9.
You don't need to go for it on fourth down when you convert as much as they did.
Well, there is that. How many did they go for last year? I'm just kind of curious how many times. Oh, that's the SEC. I have to pick up the Big 12. It'll take too long. But anyway, I just wanted to see where that situation was. Okay, let's do this. Let's do Devontae Smith. Mm-hmm. Is there a guy on this year's team that we say that guy could be that Devontae Smith of 2020? Is there a leader in the clubhouse for you? Is it as simple as Dante Cook? I've heard other people say Isaiah Bond, but is there a guy that will come? We got the quarterback, and we kind of have the idea of what it takes for the quarterback to get there. What do we need? Is there Devontae numbers on this team, or does it have to be spread around?
I mean, if it's got to be one guy, I would sit Sark down and say, Sark, if it's one guy, isn't it Cook, Bond, or Bolden? Isn't it one of those 3 guys?
Yeah.
Because I think one of those 3 guys to me could fit the bill in terms of, like, Devontae Smith is what, 6 foot, like 170, I think is what he was playing at.
Yeah.
Now, these guys are different sizes than that, but every picture I see, Anwar, and you've gotten to see it up close and personal, every picture I see at Jonte Cook, what's he rocking? Like 6 foot, 6'1", 194 or something right now. And we know he's lightning quick. That is a contestant, but I also think with what Bolden and Bond have shown us, I think those guys could have a chance to do it. And you know,
putting the numbers up so everyone can see what kind of craziness we're talking about. Kyle.
Yeah. And by the way, one of our chatters reminded us, Anwar, that Waddle got hurt early in that season.
Yeah.
And only ended up with 28 carries, but I do like a 21-yard average. You know, if you need it, 21 yards. He gave him 4 touchdowns. But it is fair to point out, Waddle gets hurt, which pushes Devontae Smith up to the top. By the way, they also lost Ruggs to the NFL the year before. So Sark can obviously replace those things. This year, Worthy, Mitchell, Sanders, Whittington, he's got to replace all of it. Not to mention the running back production that I mentioned, and that is 25 catches for Brooks in terms of the pass catching part of it. So he's done this before. He's had to replace numbers before. The question now, it's just about who can Quinn absolutely trust. If Worthy was coming back, this is a ratcheted up discussion, and people wouldn't be looking at you and me today going, wait, what did y'all say? Bama 2020. If he was coming back and Brooks was coming back. Okay, now we can really have that discussion. So they've got to find that.
Yeah.
They have to find that if they're going to take the next step. But I do think there's a possibility. Also, Anwar, I think I'm also kind of going off of these practice reports that I'm seeing from you guys that are getting to look at it. I have not heard it doesn't seem like Quinn's developed. Man, it feels like Quinn's regressed. Boy, it feels like 3 is a little slow in practice. Everything I hear. I mean, Alex Dunlap is one of my favorite no BS guys. Alex Dunlap has never, ever said anything for fluff. Like, he's not a flavoring kind of guy. That's not what Alex does. Alex tells you what he thinks at that moment. And for him to be like, hey, man, Ewers looks great. Ewers is throwing dimes out there. So I'm going off of that as well, that he's taking that step, that he's feeling the heat from Arch. Like, look, if I just slip at all, they're going to want this kid to play. I know who this is. This ain't no ordinary backup quarterback, and I've got to stay ahead of him. And it feels like he's doing that. So I'm also putting trust in that development.
Okay, let's do one last one before we get out of here, because apparently we got player availability at 11 o'clock. We've talked a little bit about Najee, so we've had that. We touched a little bit on this earlier. Gunnar Helm. Like, do you think there is a tight end conversation where we're saying, hey, at the end of the season, Gunnar Helm is that number one that basically puts up at least Billingsley numbers, if not Billingsley and Tennyson combined kind of numbers, which, golly. And I'm not Tennyson, Miller, what is his name? Forrestal?
Yeah, Forrestal. Yeah, I mean, that's, again, we're talking about you're at 41 with those two guys, and Sanders was at 45. So, again, I think comparable numbers there. You got to find 40, 45 catches for tight ends if you're going to try to match it up. Anwar, the time at Bama, no matter who was calling plays, it never was thought of as some kind of tight end factory, like ever. It just wasn't. I mean, there were guys like O.J. Howard and others that went through there that, frankly, didn't get used enough. When O.J. Howard left and went to the Bucs, I remember thinking, like, man, that's a fresh-ass tight end you're getting if you're Tampa, because Lane Kiffin, I believe, would have been his guy. Didn't really dial him up enough with all their other talent. But I think there's in fact, it's interesting that you asked this question, because your note, I think it was your note in a war room that stood out to me when you talked about Gunnar Helm and his speed, the way he looks on a field. You're like, you know what? Gunnar Helm doesn't look that different in terms of the movement. He doesn't look that different from Sanders.
No. And
I start to think, okay, well, is that worth, 14 catches? He had 14 last year. Can he take 14 and make it 20? And then you're asking Niblack to just continue to develop. I dig Niblack. He's not your traditional tight end in some ways, but I like what he is. I think he can be, again, go back to the touchdown against Texas. Where was he lined up? He was kind of in the slot left. They went double tights. He was kind of in that, H-back, kind of off the line. And then they ran two tight end patterns together. And he just found an open spot. And it was a nice little route, not your typical tight end route is what I mean by that. And so I absolutely think that together, I think those guys can get to the 40, 45 neighborhood in terms of catches. Absolutely. I do.
Man. All right, Chad. Well, listen, man, I've got to go from lovely Cedar Park to downtown Austin.
All right.
And interview some players this morning. So you got any final thoughts before we head out?
The only final thought I have is, if you want to get mad at the old fashioned for this notion that Texas's offense could be anywhere near as good as Bama in 2020, I got to take the heat, because I'm the one that threw out this goofy idea. Do not blame the old fashioned. Blame me. You can blame me for this one.
No, but you know what? When they say men lie, women lie, and the numbers don't. Well, the numbers actually don't lie. And that's right, Cotton. I forgot. Travis Scott is actually on campus today.
No.
I think he's teaching. Cotton, is he like teaching the class? I think he's teaching some sort of class. Someone sent me something about this, but
Weird.
I think he's doing something. He's not performing, but someone sent me a DM about this. He's teaching some sort of class, I think, down there at the University of Texas. He's at 10 o'clock at the Hogg Memorial Auditorium. Jack is at, I don't know what's going on, but Travis Scott and Michael Rubin teach business and entrepreneurship 101 today. So that's a business and entrepreneurship is what that's supposed to be. So yes, that's by the time I get down there, Cotton, everyone should have had their parking, and I think I should be okay. So I appreciate my main man Chad Hastings joining in, sitting in this morning. As always does a fantastic job. Of course, you can catch Chad a little bit later, or just a couple of hours later, with him and Catch today at House Divided. It always has good, entertaining stuff, which you guys always talk about. So make sure you check those guys out. Chad, is there a show tonight, by the way? Do we do an evening show?
No show tonight. The off-season schedule just once a week on The Outsiders. Last night, we had a good conversation with the fellas, including Chance Mock, talking about being a Bills fan, losing his receiver to Houston. And he's not heartbroken about it. He's not.
Well, he should be. I mean, they don't. It's just, it's weird. I love the notion of like, oh yeah, we could just replace that guy. I'm like, okay, here's what, like, all I'm going to say is, you want to make sure that when you have your quarterback in his prime, that you give him a legit number one receiver. Because if you waste away those years, and we've seen it happen when you don't give the guy the legit number ones, all of a sudden bad things happen. But who knows? Hey, we know if you're a Buffalo Bills and you say Xavier Worthy is out there and Adonai Mitchell is out there, you may say to yourself, you know what? You got a chance to replace that guy late in the first round. So that might happen. But until then, you try to be back at noon. I'll be back tomorrow morning. Alex should be back here as well. You guys take care. Remember what I always say, live each day like it's your last, because one day it will be. Chad, what's that thing you always say at the end of every show?
That would be